Hello Internet, I'm the Disney Brain, starting off the new year right by delivering the long-awaited review of Lightspeed Rescue. That, and we'll also discuss the viewer competition on the back end of this video, so excitement all around. What Lightspeed lacks in deeper story elements and competent villains, it makes up for, to some degree, with a more poised, straightforward style of story delivery about mature professionals coming together to stop the bad guys, a type of team this franchise is really good at presenting. And instead of the more mystical or technology-driven elements we see in the seasons before and after, we get a Ranger team that prides itself on operating in a decidedly American way, right down to having the first American exclusive Ranger. Adding to that focus on a generally Western mentality, we see this emphasis on the everyday hero, in addition to the suited ones, but I would argue they didn't even take things far enough on that end, which I'll get into later. But for now, let's break down how it all began with our premiere episode, Operation Lightspeed. Operation Lightspeed is a solid opening episode, giving us just enough information to buy into this new Ranger ride. For as much as I enjoyed this straightforward response team approach here, I also thought that this mentality holds certain aspects of the season back a bit. The reason this opener didn't make my top 10 list for pilot episodes is because of that. Things felt too straightforward, like everything was arranged just so, and without many challenging or unexpected complications, other than Carter trying to run over a monster because that's just epic. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it was boring, but it did strike me as a little too organized. And that's at least in part due to the villains of this season usually being unable to generate tension. But on the flip side, one thing I liked about the organization of this episode is on the hero front. The Aqua Base was all types of prepared for when the demons would return. At first, it's a bit head-scratching because how could anyone know this much about the demons already? But after we learn about Ryan's fate and Captain Mitchell's deal with Diabolico, it all theoretically adds up. After that life-shattering event, the captain must have desperately tore through every piece of intelligence he could find on what demons are, what beats them, and when they might rise up again, knowing that if Diabolico was true to his word, then he'd have until Ryan turned 20 to prepare. And since we know for a fact that the Lightspeed team is very much a part of the larger Ranger picture, then Mariner Bay must know that monsters are very much a thing and have been for years, brain-dead receptionist notwithstanding. We can then surmise that Mitchell was able to successfully sell his cause, resulting in billions spent on building a base, or perhaps repurposing an old one, with the demon's water weakness in mind, in addition to tapping into the morphing grid, cause he certainly didn't self-fund this thing on a fireman's salary. That, or his likely deceased wife was loaded, but we're getting off topic. The bigger point is this: I liked the way that this season opened, but I didn't love it. But as with most aspects of Lightspeed Rescue, the general concepts that define this season eventually grew on me, with Carter being the obvious exception since he starts and ends as the best thing here. But one aspect of the season that almost immediately caught my attention in a very positive way is also a huge focal point of the first half of Lightspeed plot-wise. That aspect being the focus on the rescue. We talked a little bit about that during my last video, but it demands reiterating because it's such an important detail for this particular season. It's worth acknowledging that GoGo 5 put in a lot of legwork, especially during early episodes, with regards to establishing that focus. But even during original segments, the premium placed on saving people in more ways than one was ever present. This ended up adding a ton of diversity to your otherwise fairly standard Megazord fights. We get plenty of that, of course, but we also see very innovative uses for the rescue Zords, the likes of which no season has ever matched. It's like that one kind of neat scene from the first movie, except times 5. To the point where, as I also mentioned before, many episodes spend more time rescuing than actually fighting, as they should, because buildings get messed up this go-round, like way more so than usual. I'm honestly surprised there was anything left of Mariner Bay by the time Queen Banshira had her legs under her. I know I don't usually talk a ton about Zords beyond the fact that they exist, but in this case, these unique scenes made the rescue Zords among my favorite. I usually favor the Zords that look more alive, or that actually are alive, because sometimes that adds an extra dimension to the story that goes beyond just another machine used to fight big monsters. The rescue Zords serve as the exception because their inclusion actually does add an extra dimension to the season, a dimension that focuses more on the process of saving people, which makes a ton of sense given how Lightspeed Rescue functions, similar to how in Jungle Fury, focusing on the process of fighting, more so than just the fighting itself, adds weight to the narrative of progress through proper tutelage. And while we're on the topic of teaching, there is a good amount of focus placed on that too. We see this in episode 2, with Joel being Joel and trying to take on too much by himself. While Joel as a character only changes so much, there's also something to be said for how quickly he internalizes the coming together part of being a team. And I think that has a lot to do with Carter. Even during episode 1, Carter is the one pulling Joel back in, and not with oppressive orders as early days Scott would have done. Everyone lauds over Carter driving headfirst into trouble as an episode 1 highlight, and rightly so, awesome moment. But to me, Carter's first highlight was standing up and accepting the Ranger mission only because he thought it would be the right thing to do. And from there, everyone else kind of gravitates towards his very natural affinity for leadership. Nobody has to outright say it, but everyone, even the solo-focused Sky Cowboy, has respect for Carter right out of the gate, which in turn makes Joel practically the opposite of how the much quieter but also solo-focused Will Aston progresses. Moving into a season cornerstone in Trial by Fire, few things excite me more than a Ranger training sequence. I love it when seasons use at least some of their runtime to show the Rangers trying to get better. It simply makes the end results we see feel more earned, and it's very commonplace in this season, which is an even bigger plus. And what this particular training eventually accomplishes very early is telling us that, yeah, Carter seems to have a handle on pretty much everything. Even Joel listens to him, but even the former firefighter has areas where he can improve, something he is well aware of even before this point, ergo why he never took any breaks until Mitchell tells him to do so much later. However, I do have one issue with this episode, and that's how cryptically Captain Mitchell handles the situation. It fits in well with a television format, since we get a setup leading into a reveal, then a realization, and then a renewed sense of purpose. But on a practical level, it doesn't make a lot of sense to not be very clear with Carter about what the issue is long before this point, and it happens twice. This also ended up being my only real issue with Mitchell in general, an issue that also carries over into Matter of Trust, an ironic episode title more than anything, where he pulls that same trick with Dana, but this time, it was a much worse setup leading into a reveal, because there was no reason to not tell Dana the full story up front. The plan here involved deceiving the demons, not each other. Mitchell has a lot of great moments and bits of characterization elsewhere, but a couple choice early episodes make it seem like he's still trying to figure out that leading works better when you're clearly spelling things out. This purposeful misleading, only to drag out a build-up to a fairly unsurprising reveal, just isn't necessary, especially given how to the point most of this season proves to be. But getting back to these early rescue episodes, the most important thing about all of them is that everyone to some degree gets to be developed from it. Not only does Kelsey get to shine in riding the edge, but we also see both her and Chad shining up to the challenge, which creates another unique way to save people, this time saving them from themselves and their at times self-destructive attitudes. It also gives us the true to form start of one of the more adorable Ranger pairings, even if they never technically take it further than a cute friendship. And there is also that mermaid Chad's really into. But I strongly believe that Go Volcanic is the best example of saving people from themselves. Ironically, I thought we got a lot more from the supporting actor here than Dana herself, but it was still a great episode that got civilians involved sensibly, while thankfully avoiding any grading child actors, something they would not avoid for very long. In line with the notion that anyone can be a hero, a notion this season proudly stands by, a common thief steps up to do the right thing before accepting his consequences. Maybe hero isn't exactly the right word in this case, but I did really like this consistent angle of misguided people doing misguided things and learning how misguided they are. Chad and Kelsey get to partake in this quite a bit, effectively reforming family members, old masters, and new friends alike. All in all, Lightspeed Rescue was smart enough to understand that rescuing people can take on a lot of different forms, which in turn created several early episode highlights that made this season really stand out from its peers. Now let's dive into the Ryan Mitchell arc. It all starts with Deep in the Shadows, in where Carter is testing out the titanium morpher, to poor results. What we see here is that just like the series Black Hardware Dylan operates, not just anyone can use this much stronger morpher. So then it gets stolen and we're introduced to the 100% original Titanium Ranger, only to get a fairly unoriginal 6 Ranger easily beats up the other's plot point immediately after. But the best aspect of this arc is what we get from Captain Mitchell, both before and after the truth is revealed. We see Mitchell in a more fragile state for really the first time, showing as much emotion as he can muster while fighting against that to stay poised as the leader of the Aqua Base. And then, the story of Mitchell's greatest regret, and the deal he had to make to ensure his son could survive, which likely went on to fuel his motivation to prepare for when the demons would strike next. There was a lot of paths this season could have taken with the demons, but using them as wish-granting devils, or put another way, using literal demons to create internal ones to be expelled later, was actually interesting. And it's not exclusive to Diabolico either. Viper grants Chad's would-be abuser power in exchange for compliance. That, on top of her doing her best Ursula impression to get the drop on Chad through Marina. And before that, another demon tricks Chad's old master in an effort to get stronger. And now that I'm thinking about it, Chad gets way more focus in this season than I originally thought. Getting back to the episodes at hand, we see how the demons also played Ryan, forcing him to fight for their side by instilling this idea that Papa Mitchell only cared about saving Dana. I think that's a fine setup, but kind of a hollow one, just in terms of what we see. We understand just how much power Diabolico still has on Ryan when Curse of the Cobra happens, so I feel like they could have really gone all in and screwed around with a lot more of Ryan's memories, similar to how Daishi went from evil to damn near inhuman after Carnosaur put him through a bit of re-education, because as is, it just felt a little too easy for Ryan to reform. He's not under a spell here. This is something a lot more powerful than that, a lot more deeply seated than that. But the show doesn't treat it as such, yet another consequence of playing things too straightforward when such a situation demanded something more. But, to counter that bit of criticism to an extent, this reveal and eventual reformation does for Mitchell what Overdrive couldn't do for Mr. Hartford. They made Mitchell's unraveling the focal point of the story, as it should have been. They made it so that his reactions, decisions, regrets, and attempted sacrifice stood as the centerpiece of the entire arc. And in doing so, we see sides of him that we hadn't seen before, even when his daughter was in danger. And then, once Ryan is back, we really get the sense that Mitchell is much less uptight now, up until the Queen's return, where Ryan leaves again. Mitchell just exhibits a completely different aura when Ryan is around, which adds up, since the personal guilt weighing him down all these years has finally been lifted. He even gives the Rangers the day off after the Titanium Ranger arc officially ends, something that he clearly has not done before. Interestingly enough, and for maybe the first and only time, I strongly believe that the 6th Ranger here wasn't the biggest benefactor character-wise from the 6th Ranger arc. Ryan himself is pretty good though, but a little too stiff acting-wise at times. But can you really blame him? He had to grow up in Demon County listening to this.
This could be interesting. Faster! If it isn't the Power Rangers! Surprised? Wild horses couldn't drag me away. Ha ha ha! Ha ha! Ha 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 ha!
My biggest takeaway from Ryan himself, though, is his willingness to go above and beyond just responding to the threat and being proactive about ending it. Something only he is really equipped to do, since he knows the enemy firsthand. We understand that this decision was probably made to save money, since filming with an exclusive Ranger means lots of exclusive footage. But I appreciated the way they worked through that limitation, giving us a sensible reason for Ryan to go off on his own, and not just hoping nobody notices when he mysteriously leaves the fight or doesn't join it until much later. Mighty Morphin did this every now and again, and it was just too obvious, but here, it cleanly fits into the story. Before we talk about the Rangers, the villains, and the back half of the plot in Part 2, let's end Part 1 by discussing one of the more divisive team-up episodes of all time, Shekinah's Revenge. But honestly, I don't understand why it's so polarizing. All of its inbuilt issues make it clear, at least to me, that this two-parter is nothing short of disposable junk. I don't even need to tell most of you how much it hurts to harshly critique anything the Galaxy Rangers are a part of. But to me, This was more of a team-up between Lightspeed Rescue and Annoying Junior Ranger than it was anything else. And because I love Lost Galaxy more than anything, it made the experience so much worse. And having rewatched it recently, it's impossible to not view it through the lens of the chaos and behind-the-scenes drama that will forever define it. I mean, seriously, nobody wanted to be here and nobody wanted to make this. Least of all Amy Miller, you know, the villain in the freaking title. So here's how the story breaks down. This random kid and her mom are trying to surprise daddy, but uh-oh, monsters are on the loose. Monsters, you say? Psh, what do we look like, Angel Grove? There's literally never been any monsters in Mariner Bay, like, ever. Not even one. All those buildings were destroyed by, like, natural causes and stuff, at least according to the news I watch. You're so small. Of course I won't believe your claims because I'm an adult. Where are your parents? Oh, captured? Oh, well, that sounds like a job for literally anyone else. But all's right with the world, because Carter is here to save the day. Okay, can we just let her get captured or something and pick her up later? Is that a viable option? Yes? No? Look, guys, I don't want to come off as too harsh on a kid, but why the hell is she the focal point of a team-up episode where Maya hardly speaks at all and Kendricks and Damon aren't even in part 1? I mean, jeez, this is aggressively bad. Clash of the Red Rangers bad. To the point where Danny Slavin couldn't even be bothered to finish his voiceover lines. It was distracting as all hell, but I don't blame him, because this muddled mess would still be a muddled mess even if he did force himself to the finish line. And then, the big bad boss battle, an amazing concept turn scene where two distinct ranger powers combine into one. A scene that falls completely flat, because at no point does this two-parter ever earn this upgrade. I mean, seriously, call me crazy, but this was borderline offensive. To try and pawn off this kind of moment on us, a moment that should have been symbolic of two teams actually coming together, was nothing short of a bad joke. We got better character dynamics in Forever Red, an episode that was half as long. It's not even enough to call Shekinah's Revenge a by-the-numbers team-up. That would imply that they actually had a clue as to what they were doing here. No, it's just an insultingly terrible team-up. And just one more thing. These Galaxy Rangers, except for Maya, are all back home again after over a year away from Earth. And they feel nothing? Okay, alright. You did it, Shekinah's Revenge. You've beaten me. So, yeah, did not mean for things to get this dour near the tail end of the video, but hey, you know what's a lot more positive? It's finally viewer competition time. I spent a long time primarily thinking up what the end result and the prizes would look like, but it's finally arrived. And all you have to do to enter is to read and share your thoughts on my now completed first Chronic Storm story on Wattpad. You might need to create an account to comment, but that process is really easy, and I'd prefer to keep all the entries in one place just to make it simpler to sort through. Some of you guys have been following while I was uploading, so don't worry. I have read your comments, and if you want to take part, then you're already in. I know what you must be thinking. How will I judge, and what do you win? Well, the winning part is more fun, so let's go over that first. The first place winner will get the chance to collaborate with me on an upcoming video. And we're talking the full package too. We'll be running through scripts, talking up a storm, sharing our thoughts and perspectives, proofreading like a mother effer, and maybe even sharing some recording duties. Basically, all the fun stuff that edit-heavy content creators like me go through every week. But here's the thing, guys. There won't be just one winner. Oh, no. Because all the runner-ups I choose, including the first place winner, will be invited to take part in a podcast that I'm looking to set up through Discord. So if any of you were ever dying to talk to me live, I can finally grant your very peculiar wish. I don't yet know how many runner-ups there will be, nor do I know much about Discord yet, but I'll keep you all posted on Twitter. Ideally, I can include everyone who takes the time to craft an awesome review. But wait! There's more. A community voting prize. So, the way voting works on Wattpad is that you can vote on every single chapter, and that helps with analytical such and such, which helps more people see my work, which would be amazing, because writing really is one of my biggest passions, and I'd love to write for a larger audience. But of course, I'd never ask for such a thing without a fitting prize. Here's the deal, guys. If this first story gets over 1,000 votes total on Wattpad, then I will finally review Power Rangers Hyperforce. A lot of you have been asking for several months now, and I'm willing to deliver. And realistically, it wouldn't take a super huge number of you to get it over the top, since one person can at most vote 18 times. And if we reach some other higher goal, who knows, maybe we can start going even further beyond in the realm of tokusatsu. And finally, judging. Honestly guys, it's me, and most of you are pretty keen on the things that really sway me. But for the uninitiated among you, here's a small tip that is not meant as an innuendo. I like the longer, more thought-provoking comments. Also important guys, do not be afraid of criticizing things. As much as I love it when people love what I do or write, thoughtful criticism will also be highly revered once it comes time to judge responses. And don't worry about speed here, this contest will last for like a month at least, so you guys got time. Link to the story in the description below, and I'll post a short summary of the competition details in the comments as well. Last but certainly not least, I'd like to take a minute to share some of the incredible fan art I've already received from you the viewers. Huge shout out to Luis Umana, my first ever fan artist who helped me create a defined aesthetic for my Chronic Storm team. It took a lot of back and forth, but we figured it out. Next, they call him Carnival Ranger. Special shout out to him for bestowing upon us mere mortals the godly Chronic Storm logo and sharpening up the Ranger designs that I used to create the story cover. Check out some of his other work on Instagram, link also in the description, because it's pretty awesome what this guy can create. And one more shout out to Josh Stider, I really should have asked you to pronounce that before now, but anyways, who also designed his own Chronic Storm Rangers, a thinner variety than Carnival's work. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this, and thank you again to everyone that I showcased here. You didn't have to do any of this, but you did, and I love you for it. And if any more of you guys want to make fan art, not just of Chronic Storm, but maybe, for example, for this terribly photoshopped picture by yours truly, which I've fully embraced as my channel's definitive meme, go for it. Send it to me on Twitter, and I will share it there, as well as start sharing collections of fan art on the back end of future videos. But I've rambled plenty for one video. Happy reading to all of those participating, while I finish up writing part 2 of this review. And until then, thanks for watching.